Hughes.
Here.
Beasley. Batchelder.
Here.
Money.
Here.
Williams. Here. Nelson. And Egan is present. There are 5 present, 2 absent, Mr. President.
Okay, now is the time that we're going to go into public comment. When we do public comment, please state your name and address for the record. You don't have to give us your street address, but, Rose City, Lupton. But before we start, I know many of you are passionate about the topic that we're here for. This is a public meeting, so make sure that all voices can be heard. We're going to set some ground rules. Everyone has a right to speak without interruption. Please understand that we are not professional speakers, and this is an emotionally charged issue. So if you have a question or concern on a word or phrase being used, please wait and ask for clarification. Please be aware that all comments will be made part of the public record of this meeting. So take time to gather your thoughts before you approach the microphone. When I use the gavel, that means I need order and all conversations have to stop. If you do not follow the aforementioned rules, you will be asked to leave. Please understand that these rules are not meant to hinder discussion, but to guarantee that everyone has a chance to be heard. Each speaker will be limited to 2 minutes. Although I do understand that a large group has chosen a spokesperson, and we will give additional time to that person. And I do believe Mr. and Mrs. Janzcewski wishes to address the board first.
Good evening. First, I have to thank the community for being here, to all of you for supporting us. This is no longer about our son, this is about all of our children. I need to give some clarification and some background. Last November, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, it was the middle of a week. That following Sunday, a state trooper pulled in our yard and told us that our son had been molested. Of course, we fell apart, and then they told us who did it. At the time, they were investigating. I had to be quiet. I've worked for this district 10 years. I've worked with these teachers for 10 years in their classrooms. I had to go to work every day and look at them and not say a word. I held my tongue many times, as one particular teacher, Miss Sandy Lee, continually told the children that it was a misunderstanding. Neil Erickson would be back. He'd be back next year for sure. This was going to get cleared up. I then left for my first surgery. When I came back to school, I found out I had to have a second surgery. I went and took care of that, and I come back again, and Sandy Lee cornered me in a classroom. She had continually told me that she wanted to go have drinks to discuss this situation. I avoided her and told her this was not something I was talking about. So she cornered me in the classroom with students, I might add. A few of her questions to me as she's whispering, Neil is sorry. Would it have made a difference if Cody was 18? Are we pressing charges? This was a bad time in Neil's life. It was a mistake. Sandy wanted to talk to Cody because Neil couldn't. Through all of this, I'm standing here and I'm looking at her, trying not to cry. She's talking about my child in a room full of students. And then she had the nerve to ask me if I was angry. I left that room and called my husband, and he immediately called the prosecutor. The troopers were there, the state troopers were there, and they pulled her out, and she immediately lawyered up. In this letter from Trooper Pintar, She says, when I made contact with you earlier this week, this was to Miss Lee, sorry about that. You advised me you would like to have your attorney with you during questioning. Therefore, I'm making myself available to you and your attorney. After this was all looked into, of course, she denied most of this, claiming that I wanted to talk about this. The school looked into it. The school attorneys came back with it's a she said, because there was no adult witness available. After coming off a second surgery, when in the world did I have time to make anything like this up? I feel violated in that itself, that something wasn't done with her then. In the school's one defense, they did tell the teachers that they weren't supposed to talk about this, and she was warned several times. But again, there was no reprimand coming to her for any of this. After that, we continued on, and we got to Neil Erickson's plea, and for them to drop the rest of the charges, he pleaded guilty to one case of CSC1. In fact, there were 3 cases of CSC1. There was pornographic material on his computer. He was distributing movies and pornographic material to our son. All of that got dropped, so he could just plead to the one case. Many of you have these letters that these teachers wrote in his defense, that it is my understanding he put out to people to support him. And several of these letters I have highlighted, and if you go through, these things just jump out to me. Tony Erickson, I understand 7 years ago my husband made a very grave mistake. It is my opinion that Cody did not or does not perceive himself to be a victim. At the bottom, he made a huge mistake, but it shouldn't define who he is. As for punishment, because I know that is something the community expects, hasn't he been punished enough? And then at the end, she adds, I've seen many delightful students who have been damaged by horrible events in their life. I do not believe he was damaged by Neil's actions, and I base my opinion on my personal interaction with Cody. The last I checked, she was not a psychologist. Amy Hubert Egan, nice long letter. She states he made a mistake. The loss of his career in teaching and the hurt he has caused his family and friends has already been huge punishment. Are you looking for rehabilitation? He has done this. And in her closing, I'm asking that Neil be given the absolute minimum sentence. I'm also hoping he can stay remained to custody in the Ogemaw County Jail and not be sent to a prison facility. There are many others. Kathleen Shield wrote 2 different letters, one in her maiden name and one in her married name. She was married a year ago this summer. I don't even begin to understand this. Marilyn Glover states in her letter that she is a 4th grade teacher at Rose City Schools. And then she goes on, although Neil has pled guilty to a single charge of criminal sexual conduct, evidence of this being a one-time incident reaffirms the fact he is not a sexual predator. She does not have her facts correct. It was more than one time. Sally Campbell, retired, so I won't even bother with that one. Sandy Lee states on here she's been a Rose City school teacher for 31 years. At the bottom, Neil is fully aware he engaged in illegal behavior 7 years ago and has shown complete cooperation during the investigation. He has shown remorse for his actions and been totally forthcoming. He's complied with all demands that were made. Losing his job and the chance to work with a school setting and hurting his family and friends has been extremely punishing to all involved. Although fully aware Neil did something illegal, I'm proud to have him as my friend. Throughout this case, Neil is the only one who was totally honest about what happened, and he was a better man by refusing to go to trial to drag Cody's name through the mud. What exactly did she do? She dragged it through the mud. And Carol Rao, teacher at West Branch Rose City Schools. Neil made a serious error of judgment and is suffering the consequences. Where in any of these letters from our educators do they support the child? Not just my child, any child.